The rain fell in heavy sheets across the scrapyard, turning the red dust of Kepler 442b into crimson mud that clung to everything. Marcus Chen wiped his hands on his overalls and squinted through the downpour at the twisted remains of what had once been a Galactic Federation supply ship. The crash had happened 3 days ago, and already the local salvage crews had picked through most of the valuable components. As the only human engineer on this backwater mining planet, Marcus often got the jobs nobody else wanted. Today's task was simple enough: extract the ship's fusion core before it destabilized and turned half the scrapyard into a crater. The Zephyrian authorities had given him 6 hours to complete the work, which was typical. They always assumed humans worked as slowly as they did. Marcus climbed through a gaping hole in the ship's hull, his modified scanner beeping steadily as it detected radiation signatures. The corridors were dark, filled with the acrid smell of burned electronics and something else he couldn't quite identify. His boots splashed through pools of coolant as he made his way toward the engine room. The ship had been a cargo vessel, probably carrying supplies to one of the Outer Rim colonies. From the scorch marks along the walls, it looked like the crew had tried to fight whatever brought them down. Marcus paused at what remained of the bridge, noting the plasma burns and the emergency beacon still blinking weakly in the wreckage. He was about to continue toward the engine room when he heard it, a soft whimpering sound coming from somewhere deeper in the ship. Marcus stopped, listening carefully. The sound came again, definitely organic, definitely alive. His scanner showed no human life signs, which meant it was probably one of the alien crew members who had survived the crash. Following the sound, Marcus made his way through a collapsed section of the ship's living quarters. The whimpering grew louder, more desperate. He pushed aside a fallen beam and found himself looking into what had once been a storage compartment. Huddled in the corner, barely visible in the dim light from his helmet lamp, was a small dragon. Marcus had seen dragons before, of course. The Draconians were one of the oldest species in the galaxy, their empire spanning dozens of star systems. But this dragon was different. She was young, maybe equivalent to a human child, with scales that shifted from deep purple to silver in the light. Her wings were folded tightly against her back, and her golden eyes were wide with fear. "Easy there," Marcus said softly, keeping his voice calm. "I'm not going to hurt you." The dragon pressed herself further into the corner, a small puff of smoke escaping from her nostrils. She was injured, Marcus realized. A long gash ran along her left wing, and there were burns on her tail where something had caught fire. "What are you doing here, little one?" Marcus asked, slowly removing his helmet so she could see his face. "Where's your family?" The dragon's eyes fixed on him with surprising intelligence. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper, the words coming out in heavily accented Standard Galactic. "Nobody wants me," she said, her voice breaking on the words. "They left me behind." Marcus felt his heart clench. He had heard stories about Dragon Society, how they valued strength and power above all else. Young dragons who showed weakness or failed to develop their abilities quickly enough were sometimes abandoned, left to fend for themselves in a galaxy that had little patience for the unwanted. "What's your name?" he asked gently. The dragon hesitated for a long moment. "Zara," she finally whispered. "My name is Zara." "Well, Zara, my name is Marcus. I'm here to help." He slowly reached into his toolkit and pulled out a small medical scanner. "Can I take a look at your injuries? I might be able to help." Zara flinched when he moved closer, but she didn't try to run. Marcus carefully examined her wounds, noting the way she tried to hide her pain. The gash on her wing was deep but clean, probably from a piece of sharp metal during the crash. The burns on her tail were more serious, but nothing that couldn't be treated with the right medical supplies. "You're going to be okay," Marcus said, pulling a basic medical kit from his belt. "These injuries look worse than they are." As he worked, cleaning and bandaging her wounds, Zara watched him with those intelligent golden eyes. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. "I'm nothing special. I can barely breathe fire, my scales aren't very strong, and I can't even fly properly yet." Marcus paused in his work, looking at the young dragon with sympathy. "You know what I think," he said. "I think whoever told you that was wrong. You survived a ship crash that killed everyone else aboard. You managed to find shelter and stay alive for 3 days in a wreck that's been picked over by scavengers. That sounds pretty special to me." Zara's eyes widened slightly. "But I'm weak. The others always said so." My clutch siblings were all stronger, faster, better at everything. Strength isn't just about how hard you can bite or how hot your fire burns, Marcus said, securing the bandage on her wing. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is survive when everyone else gives up. The dragon was quiet for a long moment, processing his words. Are you going to leave me here too? The question hit Marcus harder than he expected. He looked at the small, injured creature who had been abandoned by her own kind, and he made a decision that would change both their lives forever. No, he said firmly. I'm not going to leave you here. But where will I go? Zara asked, hope creeping into her voice. Dragons aren't welcome in most places. The Galactic Federation barely tolerates us, and humans. She trailed off, uncertainty in her expression. Humans what? Marcus asked. Everyone says humans are weak. That you can't even survive on your own planets without technology. Why would you want to help someone like me? Marcus couldn't help but smile at that. It was true that humans were often seen as the weakest species in the galaxy. They had no natural weapons, no protective scales or shells, and they needed artificial environments to survive in space. But what other species often failed to understand was that humans had something else entirely, an almost limitless capacity for adaptation and stubborn refusal to give up on those they cared about. Maybe we're both stronger than people give us credit for, he said. How about this, you come with me, and we'll figure it out together. Zara stared at him in amazement. You mean it? You would really take me with you? I mean it, Marcus said. But I have to finish my job first. I need to remove the fusion core from this ship before it explodes. Can you walk? Zara struggled to her feet, favoring her injured wing but managing to stay upright. I can walk, she said with determination that reminded Marcus of himself at that age. Good. Stay close to me and do exactly what I tell you, okay? We're going to get out of here together. As they made their way through the ship toward the engine room, Marcus couldn't help but think about what he was getting himself into. Taking care of a young dragon was going to be complicated. Dragons needed specialized food, had specific environmental requirements, and grew to be quite large. Not to mention the legal complications of essentially adopting a member of another species. But when he looked down at Zara, limping along beside him with fierce determination despite her injuries, he knew he had made the right choice. There was something special about this young dragon, something that had nothing to do with her fire-breathing abilities or the strength of her scales. The engine room was a mess of twisted metal and sparking electronics. The fusion core sat in the center, a sphere of contained energy that pulsed with dangerous light. Marcus had done this kind of extraction dozens of times, but never with a young dragon watching his every move. What are you doing? Zara asked as Marcus began connecting cables to the core's containment unit. I'm rerouting the power flow so I can safely remove the core, Marcus explained. If I do it wrong, we both become very small particles spread across several square kilometers. Zara's eyes went wide. That sounds dangerous. It is, Marcus admitted. But that's why they pay me the big credits. He paused to check a readout on his scanner. Besides, humans are pretty good at doing dangerous things. It's kind of our specialty. As he worked, Marcus found himself explaining each step of the process to Zara. The dragon listened intently, asking intelligent questions that showed she had a natural understanding of technology that surprised him. Most dragons he had met were dismissive of engineering and science, considering such pursuits beneath them. How do you know all this? Zara asked as Marcus carefully disconnected the final power coupling. I studied engineering at the Terran Technical Institute, Marcus said, his hand steady despite the dangerous energy crackling just centimeters away. Humans might not be the strongest or fastest species in the galaxy, but we're pretty good at figuring out how things work. Is that why you're here? On this planet? Marcus was quiet for a moment as he activated the extraction sequence. I'm here because I wanted to make a difference. Earth is safe and comfortable, but out here on the frontier, there are problems that need solving. People who need help. The extraction completed with a soft hum, and Marcus carefully lifted the contained fusion core. Like abandoned young dragons who need someone to believe in them. Zara looked up at him with something approaching worship in her golden eyes. You really think I'm worth saving? I think you're worth a lot more than that, Marcus said, securing the core in a transport container. I think you're going to do amazing things someday. But, first, we need to get out of here and get you some proper medical attention. As they made their way back through the ship, Zara stayed close to Marcus's side. The rain had stopped by the time they emerged from the wreckage, and the twin suns of Kepler 442b were beginning to show through the clouds. Where will we go now? Zara asked as they walked across the muddy scrapyard toward Marcus's workshop. Home, Marcus said simply. We're going home. The word seemed to resonate with something deep inside the young dragon. Home. It was a concept she had never truly experienced, something she had only dreamed about during the long, lonely nights when her clutch siblings had made it clear she didn't belong. But, now, walking beside this strange human who had shown her more kindness in one afternoon than her own kind had in her entire short life, home didn't seem like such an impossible dream anymore. Marcus's workshop sat on the edge of the scrapyard, a converted shipping container that he had modified with extra insulation and a small living area. It wasn't much, but it was clean and comfortable, with workbenches full of carefully organized tools and shelves lined with technical manuals. Welcome to Casa Chen, Marcus said as he opened the door. It's not much, but it's got hot water and real coffee. Zara stepped inside cautiously, her claws clicking on the metal floor. Everything was built to human scale, which made it feel strangely cozy to her. She had grown up in the vast stone halls of the Dragon Conclave, where everything was designed to accommodate full-grown dragons. This small, cluttered space felt more welcoming than anywhere she had ever been. Is this really where you live? She asked, looking around with wonder. This is home, Marcus confirmed. At least for now. I'm working on saving up enough credits to buy a proper house, maybe something with a garden. He paused, looking at Zara with a slight smile. I might need to revise those plans a bit. Dragons need more space than humans do. The implications of his words hit Zara like a physical blow. He was already thinking about the future, about making changes to accommodate her. No one had ever done anything like that for her before. Marcus, she said softly, her voice thick with emotion. I don't understand why you're being so kind to me. Marcus set down the fusion core container and knelt in front of her so they were at eye level. Because everyone deserves someone who believes in them, he said simply. And because I have a feeling that you and I are going to make a pretty good team. Zara felt tears forming in her eyes, something that would have been seen as shameful weakness among her own kind. But Marcus just handed her a soft cloth to wipe them away, and she realized that maybe showing emotion wasn't weakness after all. Maybe it was just being honest. Now, Marcus said, standing up and dusting off his knees, let's get you properly patched up and figure out what you like to eat. I have a feeling this is going to be the start of a very interesting partnership. As the sun set over Kepler 442b, casting the scrapyard in shades of gold and crimson, Marcus began the process of truly welcoming Zara into his life. He had no idea how much this decision would change not just his own future, but the fate of entire star systems. He only knew that when he looked at this brave young dragon, he saw potential that no one else had bothered to recognize. And Zara, for the first time in her life, felt truly wanted. 3 months had passed since Marcus found Zara in the crashed ship, and life had settled into a comfortable routine. The young dragon had proven to be an exceptionally quick learner, absorbing everything Marcus taught her about engineering with an enthusiasm that amazed him. What had started as simple explanations during their salvage work had evolved into proper lessons, with Zara demonstrating an intuitive understanding of technology that surpassed many trained engineers Marcus had worked with. The workshop had been transformed to accommodate both of them. Marcus had installed a larger sleeping area for Zara, along with a heating system that could be adjusted for her specific needs. The workbench now had 2 sets of tools, including some specially modified for dragon claws. Zara had proven surprisingly dexterous with delicate work, her sharp talons perfect for handling small components that would challenge human fingers. Hand me the plasma calibrator, Marcus called out from under the engine of a civilian transport they were repairing. The ship belonged to a Centauran trader who had offered them a substantial fee to fix what 3 other repair shops had declared beyond saving. Zara passed him the tool without looking up from her own work. She was carefully rewiring the ship's navigation system, her golden eyes focused intently on the complex circuitry. At 5 months old now, she had grown considerably, though she was still small by dragon standards. Her scales had deepened to a rich purple-black with silver highlights, and her wings, though still healing from her crash injuries, were strong enough for short flights around the workshop. The power coupling is completely fried, Marcus said, sliding out from under the engine. We're going to need to fabricate a replacement. I already did, Zara said, not looking up from her work. It's in the parts bin, third shelf. I made two, in case the first one doesn't fit properly. Marcus stared at her. You fabricated a power coupling? When? This morning, before you woke up. I noticed the damage when we first examined the ship yesterday. She finally looked up, tilting her head in that way she did when she was puzzled by his reactions. Was I not supposed to do that? No, you were supposed to do exactly that, Marcus said, shaking his head in amazement. I'm just impressed. That's a complex piece to manufacture, especially without detailed schematics. Zara's scales shifted slightly, a sign Marcus had learned indicated pleasure or pride. I studied the broken piece and extrapolated the original design. Then, I cross-referenced it with the ship's technical manual to ensure compatibility. It wasn't that difficult. What she described so casually would have taken most engineers hours of careful calculation and multiple attempts. Zara had done it in her spare time, treating it like a simple puzzle to solve. Their reputation had grown considerably over the past 3 months. Word had spread through the system that there was a human dragon team on Kepler 442b who could fix anything, no matter how badly damaged. They had worked on ships from a dozen different species, each with their own unique technologies and design philosophies. Zara had absorbed it all, building an encyclopedic knowledge of galactic engineering that impressed even Marcus. Marcus? Zara said as they worked together to install the new power coupling. I've been thinking about something. What's that? The other dragons in my clutch, they always said that working with technology was beneath our kind. That dragons were meant for greater things than fixing machines. She paused, her claws clicking thoughtfully against the metal. But, I don't understand that attitude. These machines are incredible. They can cross the void between stars, sustain life in hostile environments, connect civilizations across impossible distances. How is understanding and improving such marvels anything less than magnificent? Marcus smiled as he tightened a connection. You know what I think? I think your clutch siblings were idiots. Zara's snort of laughter sent a small puff of smoke drifting through the engine compartment. Perhaps. But, their attitude is common among my people. Dragons are supposed to be warriors and rulers, not builders and fixers. Their loss, Marcus said. Besides, who says you can't be both? Some of the greatest leaders in history were the ones who understood the tools and systems they commanded. Before Zara could respond, they were interrupted by a sharp knocking on the workshop door. Marcus wiped his hands on a rag and went to answer it, finding a tall, imposing Zephyrian in military uniform standing outside. Behind him stood 2 human soldiers in Galactic Federation gear. Marcus Chen, the Zephyrian asked, his translator device rendering his whistling speech into flat standard Galactic. That's me. What can I do for you? I am Commander Vex of the Zephyrian Defense Force. These are Lieutenants Morrison and Singh from the Federation Navy. We need to speak with you about a matter of considerable urgency. Marcus glanced back at Zara, who had moved closer but stayed partially hidden behind the engine they had been working on. Her survival instincts, honed by months of abandonment, were still strong when it came to strangers. What kind of matter? Marcus asked. The kind that threatens the stability of this entire sector, Lieutenant Morrison said, stepping forward. May we come in? Marcus hesitated for a moment, then stepped aside. Sure. But, I should mention that I have a partner. She might be a bit shy around strangers. The 3 military officers entered the workshop, their eyes immediately scanning the organized chaos of tools, parts, and half-completed projects. Commander Vex's gaze stopped when he spotted Zara partially hidden behind the engine. A dragon, he said, his translator failing to convey the surprise in his whistling speech. You work with a dragon? Her name is Zara, Marcus said firmly. And, yes, she's my partner. If you have a problem with that, you can find someone else to help you. Lieutenant Singh raised a hand diplomatically. No problem at all. In fact, it might be helpful, given the nature of our situation. Zara slowly emerged from behind the engine, her golden eyes fixed on the newcomers with wary intelligence. She had grown more confident over the past months, but she still didn't trust easily. What's this about? Marcus asked, gesturing for the officers to sit on some supply crates he used as chairs. Commander Vex pulled out a datapad and activated a holographic display. The image showed a massive structure floating in space, its design unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. It looked organic, almost alive, with flowing curves and surfaces that seemed to shift and change as he watched. "This appeared in the Zirian system 6 days ago," Vex said. "It's approximately 50 kilometers long and composed of materials we can't identify. Our scientists believe it's some kind of ancient technology, possibly from the precursors." Marcus whistled low. The precursors were a legendary species that had supposedly vanished millions of years ago, leaving behind only rumors and occasional artifacts that challenged everything the galaxy thought it knew about technology. "What does it do?" Zara asked, speaking for the first time. Her voice was stronger now than when Marcus had first found her, carrying a confidence that came from months of successful work and Marcus's unwavering support. "That's the problem," Lieutenant Morrison said. "We don't know. It doesn't respond to our communications, but it's generating massive amounts of energy. Energy signatures our equipment can barely measure. And it's moving," Singh added. "Slowly, but it's definitely heading somewhere. Long-range projections suggest it's on a course for the core systems." Commander Vex manipulated the hologram, zooming in on specific sections of the structure. "We've tried everything we can think of. Our best scientists, engineers from 12 different species, even some of the most advanced AI systems in the galaxy. Nothing has been able to establish any kind of meaningful contact or understanding of this thing. So why come to us?" Marcus asked, though he was already beginning to suspect the answer. "Because," Singh said, "you two have a reputation for solving impossible problems. And because you represent something unique in the galaxy, true interspecies cooperation." Zara stepped closer to the hologram, studying it intently. "The design philosophy is interesting," she said thoughtfully. "It's not based on geometric principles like most technology. The curves and flows suggest an organic approach to engineering, but at a scale that implies incredible technological sophistication." The three officers exchanged glances. "You can see patterns in it?" Vex asked. "Of course," Zara said, as if it were obvious. "Look at the way the energy conduits flow through the structure. They follow the same patterns you see in living systems, branching networks that distribute resources efficiently while maintaining redundancy. It's actually quite beautiful." Marcus studied the image with new eyes, trying to see what Zara saw. To him, it still looked like an incomprehensible alien artifact. But he had learned to trust Zara's insights, especially when it came to complex systems. "You think it's alive?" he asked. "Not alive, exactly," Zara said. "But designed by minds that understood living systems in ways we don't. This isn't just technology. It's technology that thinks like biology." Morrison leaned forward. "Can you help us understand it?" Marcus looked at Zara, seeing the excitement building in her golden eyes. This was exactly the kind of challenge she thrived on, a puzzle that no one else could solve, a chance to prove that her unique perspective had value. "We'd need to see it in person," Marcus said. "All the scans and data in the galaxy won't substitute for hands-on examination." "That can be arranged," Vex said quickly. "We have a research ship standing by. You would be given full access to the artifact, along with whatever resources you need." "What's the timeline?" Zara asked. "How long before this thing reaches the core systems?" Singh consulted his datapad. "At current velocity, approximately 6 months. But if it accelerates..." He shrugged. "Could be much less." Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. 6 months to understand technology that had stumped the best minds in the galaxy. But when he looked at Zara, he saw something he had learned to recognize. The dragon was already working on the problem, her mind racing through possibilities and connections that others had missed. "We'll do it," he said. "But we do it our way. No interference, no second guessing. You give us the resources we need and let us work." "Agreed," Vex said immediately. "When can you leave?" Marcus looked around the workshop that had become their home. There were projects here that would need to be finished or transferred to other engineers. Equipment that would need to be secured. But, most importantly, he needed to make sure Zara was ready for what they were about to undertake. "Give us 2 days to wrap things up here," he said. "We'll be ready by then." After the officers left, Marcus and Zara sat in comfortable silence for a while, both contemplating what they had just committed to. Finally, Zara spoke. Marcus? Are you sure about this? It sounds incredibly dangerous. Probably, Marcus admitted. But that's never stopped us before. Besides, did you see how you looked at that hologram? You were already solving the puzzle before they even finished explaining the problem. Zara's scales shifted in what Marcus had learned was her equivalent of blushing. It is a fascinating challenge. The integration of organic and technological principles at that scale, it shouldn't be possible with any known materials for energy sources. Which is exactly why they need us, Marcus said. You see patterns that others miss, connections that escape conventional thinking. And He paused, considering. I have a talent for making impossible things work. We make a good team, Zara said softly. We make an exceptional team, Marcus corrected. And I have a feeling we're about to prove it to the entire galaxy. As they returned to their work on the Centauran trader's ship, both were already mentally preparing for the challenge ahead. Neither of them knew that this mysterious artifact would test not just their technical skills, but everything they had learned about trust, cooperation, and the bonds that could form between the most unlikely of partners. The galaxy was about to discover what Marcus had known from the moment he first saw Zara huddled in that crashed ship. Sometimes the most powerful force in the universe isn't strength or speed or ancient technology. Sometimes it's simply the willingness to believe in someone when no one else will. That evening, as they shared a meal of the specially formulated nutrition bars Marcus had developed for Zara's dietary needs, the young dragon asked a question that had been bothering her all day. Marcus? What if I'm wrong about the artifact? What if I can't figure it out? Marcus set down his coffee and looked at her seriously. Then, we'll figure it out together. That's what partners do. But what if, Zara? Marcus interrupted gently. Do you remember what you told me when we first met? You said nobody wanted you because you weren't strong enough, fast enough, or good enough at being a dragon. Zara nodded, uncomfortable with the memory. But you were wrong about that, weren't you? You're not weak. You're different. And different doesn't mean lesser. It means you see the universe in ways that others can't. He leaned forward, his expression intense. That artifact out there? It's different too. Which means you might be the only one who can truly understand it. Zara felt the familiar warmth that came from Marcus's unwavering faith in her abilities. It was a feeling she had never experienced before meeting him, and one that continued to amaze her with its constancy. You really believe that? She asked. I believe in you, Marcus said simply. I always have. As they prepared for bed that night, both human and dragon felt the excitement of anticipation building within them. Tomorrow, they would begin the process of transferring their current projects and preparing for their departure. In 2 days, they would board a research vessel bound for the Zirian system and one of the greatest mysteries the galaxy had ever seen. But tonight, they were content to be exactly where they were, in their small workshop on a backwater mining planet, surrounded by the tools of their trade and the comfortable certainty of their partnership. It was, Marcus reflected, a good foundation for facing the unknown. And, for Zara, who had spent the first months of her life believing she was unwanted and worthless, the simple fact that Marcus trusted her enough to take on this challenge was more precious than any amount of praise from her own kind could ever be. Together, they would face whatever secrets the ancient artifact held. Together, they would prove that the bond between a human engineer and an abandoned dragon could be stronger than anything the galaxy had seen before. The research vessel Prometheus was unlike any ship Marcus had ever worked on. A joint construction project between the Galactic Federation and the Zephyrian Defense Force, it bristled with the most advanced scanning equipment, laboratories, and analysis systems available to galactic civilization. The crew was equally impressive, scientists, engineers, and researchers from 18 different species, all considered the best in their respective fields. Marcus and Zara had been aboard for 3 days now, traveling through hyperspace toward the Zirian system. The reception from their fellow researchers had been mixed, ranging from polite curiosity to barely concealed skepticism. More than a few of the assembled experts had questioned the wisdom of bringing what they saw as a backwater engineer and his pet dragon to deal with such a momentous discovery. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the mission's chief xenoarchaeologist, had been particularly vocal in her doubts. With all due respect, she had said during their first briefing, this is potentially the most significant archaeological discovery in galactic history. Shouldn't we have actual experts leading the investigation? Marcus had simply smiled and let Zara field the question. The young dragon had calmly outlined her observations about the artifact's biotechnological design principles, referencing 17 different academic papers on precursor theory and suggesting 3 experimental approaches that none of the assembled experts had considered. Dr. Vasquez had been notably quiet since then. Now, as the Prometheus dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Zirian system, Marcus and Zara stood in the main observation deck with the rest of the research team, getting their first real look at the artifact. It was even more magnificent than the holographs had suggested. The structure hung in space like a living thing, its organic curves seeming to flow and pulse with an inner light. It was massive beyond comprehension, dwarfing the research vessel so completely that it was difficult to maintain any sense of scale. Preliminary scans confirmed the earlier reports, announced Dr. Kethvar, the mission's Altarian chief scientist. His crystalline form chimed softly as he spoke, translating complex data streams into audible patterns. Mass approximately 4.7 billion tons, composition unknown, energy output equivalent to a small star. Look at the surface patterns, Zara said quietly, her enhanced dragon vision picking up details the others couldn't see. They're not random. There's a mathematical progression in the way the organic sections interface with the technological components. Marcus followed her gaze, trusting her perception even though he couldn't see the patterns she described. Over the months they had worked together, he had learned that Zara's analytical abilities operated on a level that sometimes seemed almost supernatural. She saw connections and relationships that escaped even the most sophisticated instruments. What kind of progression? Asked Dr. Chenlu, the human xenobiologist who had been among the most welcoming of the researchers. Fibonacci sequences, but modified, Zara said, her eyes never leaving the artifact. The spiral patterns follow mathematical principles found in organic growth, but they're engineered to optimize energy distribution at scales that shouldn't be possible with known materials. Dr. Vasquez stepped forward, her earlier skepticism replaced by professional interest. You can see mathematical patterns at this distance? Dragons have exceptional visual processing capabilities, Zara explained matter-of-factly. We evolved to track multiple targets across vast distances while in flight. The same neural pathways that allow us to hunt also let us recognize complex patterns in technological systems. What Zara didn't mention was that most dragons considered such analytical thinking a weakness, a distraction from the more noble pursuits of combat and conquest. It was just another way she had never fit in with her own kind, and another reason why Marcus's acceptance meant so much to her. How close can we get? Marcus asked Captain Reynolds, the human commanding officer of the Prometheus. Current regulations require we maintain a minimum distance of 50 kilometers, Reynolds replied. The energy emissions are too dangerous for closer approach with a crew of this size. That won't be sufficient for proper analysis, Zara said. We need to examine the surface structures directly, understand the interface between organic and technological components. Impossible, said Dr. Kethvar, his crystalline form flickering with agitation. The radiation levels would be lethal to most species. Marcus and Zara exchanged a look. They had anticipated this problem and had already discussed potential solutions during their journey. What about a minimal crew? Marcus asked. A small scout ship with heavy shielding, just 2 or 3 people for a short duration mission. Even with our best shielding, the exposure would be extreme, Captain Reynolds said. I can't authorize risking lives on what might be a futile gesture. It wouldn't be futile, Zara said with quiet confidence. And it wouldn't be a risk if you send the right crew. The assembled researchers turned to look at her, and Marcus saw something in her expression that he recognized. It was the same look she got when she was working on a particularly challenging engineering problem, the focused intensity that meant she had already seen the solution while others were still struggling with the question. Dragons have natural resistance to radiation, she continued. Our scales are designed to protect us from the cosmic radiation encountered during long-distance flights. And humans. She looked at Marcus with something approaching admiration. Humans have an almost supernatural ability to adapt to hostile environments when properly equipped. You're suggesting the two of you make the approach alone? Dr. Vasquez asked, incredulous. It's the logical choice, Marcus said. We work well together, we understand each other's capabilities, and we're probably the only team here that could survive close exposure to that thing. This is madness, Dr. Kethvar chimed, his crystalline form cycling through agitated color patterns. You're talking about approaching an artifact of unknown purpose and capability with no backup, no support, and no guarantee you could return safely. Welcome to my typical Tuesday, Marcus said with a grin that made several. The corridors of the artifact defied every convention of architecture and design that Marcus had ever encountered. The walls curved and flowed like the inside of a living organism, yet they pulsed with energy patterns that spoke of technology beyond anything in galactic civilization. Bioluminescent veins ran along the surfaces, providing gentle illumination that adjusted to their presence, brightening as they approached and dimming behind them as they passed. Zara walked beside Marcus with her head tilted back, studying the ceiling where complex neural networks spread like the canopy of an alien forest. Her dragon vision allowed her to perceive patterns in the energy flows that were invisible to human eyes, and what she saw filled her with wonder. "It's learning about us," she said softly, her voice carrying a note of awe. "Every step we take, every breath we draw, it's gathering information about our biology, our technology, even our thought patterns." "That's either fascinating or terrifying," Marcus replied, running his hand along one of the walls. The surface was warm to the touch and seemed to pulse gently in response to contact. "How can you tell it's scanning our thoughts?" "Dragon neural activity operates at frequencies most species can't detect," Zara explained. "But this structure is responding to those frequencies. It's not reading our minds exactly, but it's sensing the electromagnetic patterns associated with our cognitive processes." They reached what appeared to be a junction where three corridors met. As they paused to consider which direction to take, symbols began to appear on the walls around them. The markings were unlike any writing system in the galactic databases, flowing and organic like everything else about the structure, yet clearly carrying meaning and intention. "Can you read any of it?" Marcus asked. Zara studied the symbols with intense concentration, her golden eyes tracing the patterns as they shifted and changed. "It's not writing in the traditional sense," she said slowly. "It's more like mathematical poetry. The symbols represent concepts, relationships between ideas rather than specific words." As she spoke, the symbols around them began to glow more brightly, as if responding to her understanding. New patterns appeared, more complex than the first, building on the foundation of communication they had just established. "I think it's trying to teach us its language," Zara said, excitement building in her voice. "Watch this." She approached one of the walls and carefully traced one of the simpler symbols with her claw. The marking flared with light and was replaced by a new pattern that seemed to incorporate elements of both the original symbol and something uniquely draconic. "It's adapting its communication method to incorporate our cognitive patterns," Marcus said, understanding dawning in his expression. "It's building a bridge between its way of thinking and ours." "Not just ours," Zara corrected. "Look." She pointed to another section of wall where new symbols were appearing, these incorporating geometric patterns that Marcus recognized as similar to human mathematical notation. The intelligence behind the artifact was simultaneously learning to communicate with both human and dragon minds, creating a language that could bridge the gap between species. As they continued deeper into the structure, following corridors that seemed to reconfigure themselves to guide their path, Marcus and Zara began to piece together fragments of understanding about what they had discovered. This wasn't just a ship or a space station. It was something far more profound, a repository of knowledge, a living library that had been waiting in the void for minds capable of comprehending its contents. "Marcus," Zara said as they entered a vast chamber whose walls were covered with flowing displays of information, "I don't think this artifact is from our galaxy at all." The chamber around them pulsed with activity, holographic displays showing star maps that depicted galaxies and stellar formations unlike anything in their local galactic cluster. The scope of the information was staggering, not just one galaxy, but dozens, each mapped in extraordinary detail with notation systems that spoke of civilizations rising and falling across cosmic time. "An extragalactic visitor," Marcus murmured, trying to comprehend the implications. "But why here? Why our galaxy?" The displays around them shifted in response to his question, showing what appeared to be a timeline of galactic development. They watched in fascination as the holographic history unfolded, showing the rise of spacefaring civilizations, the establishment of the Galactic Federation, and, finally, near the end of the timeline, the emergence of two specific species, humans and dragons. "It was waiting for us," Zara said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not us specifically, but species like us. Different species that could work together, that could bridge the gap between different ways of thinking. But why? Marcus asked. What's so special about cooperation between species? In response to his question, the displays around them changed again, showing images that made both human and dragon gasp in recognition. They saw civilizations that had achieved incredible heights of technological and cultural development, but only after different species had learned to combine their unique strengths and perspectives. They saw galaxies where such cooperation had never developed, remaining fragmented and eventually falling into stagnation or conflict. The pattern is consistent across multiple galaxies, Zara observed, studying the data with her analytical mind working at full capacity. Civilizations that achieve true interspecies cooperation advance exponentially faster than those that remain isolated or competitive. And this artifact is some kind of test? Marcus asked. Or maybe a reward for species that manage to work together? Before Zara could respond, the chamber around them underwent a dramatic transformation. The walls became transparent, revealing that they were now in the heart of the massive structure. Around them, extending in all directions, was a library beyond imagination, crystalline storage matrices containing the accumulated knowledge of countless civilizations across multiple galaxies. But they were not alone. A figure materialized in the center of the chamber, tall and graceful, with features that seemed to blend characteristics from dozens of different species. It was clearly artificial, a projection or construct rather than a living being, but its presence carried weight and authority that spoke of vast intelligence and ancient wisdom. Welcome, the figure said, its voice somehow perfectly adapted to be comprehensible to both human and dragon hearing. I am the Keeper. I have been waiting for minds like yours for longer than your species have existed. Marcus and Zara exchanged glances, both feeling the profound significance of the moment. This was first contact with an intelligence so advanced that it transcended any single species or galaxy. You're from the precursors? Marcus asked. I am what remains of those you call precursors, the Keeper replied. Though we were not one species, but many, united in our quest to understand the patterns that govern life and intelligence across the cosmos. What happened to them? Zara asked. The precursors, I mean. Why did they disappear? The Keeper's expression shifted, conveying something that might have been sadness. They did not disappear. They transcended. When a civilization achieves true understanding of the patterns that connect all life, they move beyond the need for physical existence. They become something greater, something that can guide and nurture the growth of younger civilizations. And this artifact? Marcus asked. What is its purpose? This is a gift, the Keeper explained. A repository of knowledge gathered from 1,000 galaxies, waiting to be shared with civilizations that have proven they can overcome the barriers that separate different forms of intelligence. Zara stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming any sense of intimidation. How do we prove we're ready for such knowledge? You have already begun, the Keeper said, and there was something almost like approval in its voice. A human and a dragon, working as equal partners. Different species, different ways of thinking, yet united in purpose. This is the foundation upon which true galactic civilization is built. The displays around them shifted again, showing Marcus and Zara their own recent history, Marcus finding Zara in the crashed ship, their work together in the scrapyard, their growing partnership and mutual respect. But the images also showed something more, the ripple effects of their cooperation, inspiring other unlikely partnerships across the galaxy. Your example has already begun to change your galaxy, the Keeper explained. Other species have observed your success and have begun to reconsider their own prejudices and assumptions about cooperation. Marcus felt a strange mixture of pride and responsibility. You're saying that what Zara and I do matters on a galactic scale. Every act of genuine cooperation between different forms of intelligence matters on a cosmic scale, the Keeper replied. The universe tends toward entropy, toward division and decay. But consciousness, working together across the boundaries of species and thought, can reverse that tide. Zara looked around at the vast library surrounding them, her mind already beginning to catalog the implications of what they were being offered. This knowledge, you're willing to share all of it? Not all at once, the Keeper said with what might have been a smile. Knowledge without wisdom is dangerous, and wisdom can only come through experience. But, yes, gradually, as your civilization proves ready for each new understanding, the library will open itself to you. What do we need to do? Marcus asked. Continue being who you are, the keeper said simply. Continue proving that different species can work together as equals, that cooperation is stronger than competition, that the barriers between minds are artificial constructs that can be overcome. The chamber around them began to shift again, and Marcus realized their time with the keeper was drawing to a close. But, before the figure could fade away entirely, Zara asked one more question. Why me? I was abandoned by my own kind, considered worthless. Why would I be chosen for something like this? The keeper turned to look directly at her, and, for a moment its artificial features seemed to convey genuine warmth. Because those who have been rejected often see clearly what those who have always belonged cannot. Because strength born from adversity is more genuine than strength that has never been tested. And, because the universe has a way of bringing together exactly the minds it needs, when it needs them. As the keeper's image began to fade, leaving Marcus and Zara alone in the crystalline library, both felt the weight of their new responsibility settling around them. They had come seeking to understand an alien artifact, and instead had discovered their role in a pattern of cooperation that spanned galaxies and eons. So, Marcus said after a long moment of contemplative silence. How do we explain this to the research team? Zara looked around at the vast repository of knowledge surrounding them, then, at her human partner who had believed in her when no one else would. Very carefully, she said. And, together. They spent the next several hours exploring the library, gathering data that would revolutionize galactic understanding of science, technology, and the nature of consciousness itself. But, more importantly, they began to understand their role as bridges between species, as living examples of what was possible when beings chose cooperation over competition. When they finally returned to the Hermes and began their journey back to the Prometheus, both carried with them more than just revolutionary data. They carried the knowledge that their partnership was not just personally meaningful, but cosmically significant. The unwanted dragon and the backwater engineer had become something neither had ever imagined, ambassadors for a new age of galactic civilization, proof that the greatest strength in the universe was not found in any single species, but in the bonds that could form between different forms of consciousness when they chose to see each other as equals. And, in the vast reaches of space, other ancient repositories began to stir, recognizing that the pattern of cooperation had once again emerged in a young galaxy, ready to guide its next steps toward transcendence. The return journey to Kepler 442b took 2 weeks, but it felt like a lifetime to Marcus and Zara. The data they had gathered from the precursor artifact was so revolutionary that the entire research team aboard the Prometheus had spent days simply trying to comprehend its implications. Dr. Vasquez, who had initially questioned their qualifications, now spoke of nominating them for the Galactic Scientific Achievement Award. Dr. Kethvar had declared their findings the most significant discovery in the history of xenoarchaeology. But, for Marcus and Zara, the real significance of their experience lay not in the accolades or recognition, but in the deeper understanding of their purpose that had emerged from their encounter with the Keeper. They carried with them now not just advanced technological knowledge, but a mission that would shape the rest of their lives. As their transport ship entered orbit around Kepler 442b, Marcus looked down at the red planet that had been their home for nearly a year. The scrapyards and mining installations looked tiny from space, insignificant specks on a world that most of the galaxy considered barely worth notice. Yet it had been here, in this forgotten corner of civilization, that one of the most important partnerships in galactic history had been forged. Are you ready for this? Zara asked, following his gaze toward their home planet. In the months since their first meeting, she had grown considerably, now nearly the size of a small shuttlecraft. But, despite her increased size and the confidence that had come with their shared successes, she still sometimes showed traces of the uncertain youngling Marcus had first encountered in that crashed ship. Ready for what? Marcus asked, though he suspected he knew what she meant. To change everything, Zara said simply. The Keeper made it clear that our work is just beginning. What we do next will determine whether our galaxy follows the path toward transcendence or remains trapped in the cycle of competition and division. Marcus nodded, feeling the weight of that responsibility. The data they had retrieved from the artifact would revolutionize galactic technology, but, more importantly, it provided a roadmap for fostering cooperation between species. The challenge now was implementing those insights in a galaxy that had spent millennia viewing differences as sources of conflict rather than strength. We'll figure it out, Marcus said, echoing words he had spoken to Zara many times over the past year. That's what we do. Their ship landed at the same spaceport where their journey had begun, but everything felt different now. Word of their discovery had spread across the galaxy, and they were no longer simply Marcus and Zara, the engineer and dragon who fixed broken ships in a backwater scrapyard. They were now public figures, symbols of successful interspecies cooperation, and the recipients of more interview requests, speaking invitations, and collaboration offers than they could possibly accept. The first surprise came as they disembarked from their transport. A crowd had gathered at the spaceport, not the usual collection of traders and miners, but beings from dozens of different species who had traveled to Kepler 442b specifically to meet them. Marcus saw Zephyrians standing beside Altarians, humans chatting with Centaurans, and even a small group of dragons who watched Zara with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright amazement. Zara called out one of the dragons, a magnificent golden female who Marcus didn't recognize. Zara of the Silver Scales. We have come to speak with you. Zara stopped in her tracks, her scales shifting through patterns that Marcus had learned indicated surprise and uncertainty. Dragons from her home world had come looking for her, members of the same society that had rejected and abandoned her barely a year before. Do you know them? Marcus asked quietly. The golden one is Seraphina, daughter of the Flamekeeper, Zara replied, her voice carefully controlled. She was one of my clutch siblings. One of the strongest, most respected dragons of my generation. Marcus could see the conflict in Zara's expression. Part of her was clearly pleased by this recognition from her own kind, but another part remained wary, remembering the rejection she had experienced. Zara of the Silver Scales, Seraphina called again as she approached, using a title Marcus had never heard before. Your deeds have reached even the highest councils of our people. The Dragon Conclave has sent us to extend an invitation for you to return home, to take your rightful place among the honored of our kind. Marcus felt a cold chill run through him. He had always known this moment might come, when Zara's success would draw the attention of the Dragon Society that had rejected her. But he hadn't expected it to feel like such a personal threat. My place is here, Zara said simply, moving closer to Marcus in a gesture of solidarity that wasn't lost on the assembled dragons. With my partner. Your partner? Seraphina's tone carried a note of confusion, as if the concept itself was foreign to her. But surely you understand that your recent achievements prove your worth as a true dragon. You need not continue this collaboration with lesser species. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow, not just for their casual dismissal of his worth, but for what they revealed about Dragon Society's fundamental misunderstanding of what Zara had accomplished. They saw her success as validation of dragon superiority, not as proof of the power of interspecies cooperation. You don't understand, Zara said, her voice growing stronger and more confident with each word. My achievements aren't in spite of my partnership with Marcus. They exist because of it. Everything I've accomplished, everything I've learned, has come from our collaboration. Collaboration? Seraphina seemed genuinely puzzled by the concept. You mean you have been using the human as a tool? That is, unusual, but perhaps effective. Marcus saw Zara's scale shift to patterns he recognized as indicating anger, though she kept her voice level when she responded. Marcus isn't a tool, she said. He's my partner, my friend, my family. He believed in me when my own kind abandoned me, and together we've discovered things that neither of our species could have found alone. Zara, Seraphina said, her tone now carrying a note of what might have been pity. You were young when you left our world. Perhaps you have forgotten what it means to be a dragon. We are a proud species, destined for greatness. We do not need the assistance of lesser beings to achieve our potential. That was when Marcus saw something in Zara's expression that reminded him of the moment they had first met, when she had told him that nobody wanted her. But, this time, the sadness was mixed with something else, a clear understanding of her own worth and the value of what she had built. You're right, Zara said quietly. I had forgotten what it meant to be a dragon according to our society's definition. But I've learned what it means to be something better. She turned to address not just Seraphina but the entire crowd that had gathered to watch this exchange, her voice carrying clearly across the spaceport. For my entire young life, I was told I was weak because I thought differently, because I found wonder in understanding rather than domination, because I believed in cooperation rather than conquest. I was abandoned because I didn't fit the narrow definition of what a dragon should be. Marcus watched as beings throughout the crowd began to lean in, drawn by the passion in Zara's voice. But I've learned something in the years since I was left behind, she continued. Strength doesn't come from standing alone at the top of a hierarchy. True strength comes from building bridges between different ways of thinking, from finding common ground between species that have nothing in common except the desire to understand and grow. You speak like a philosopher, Seraphina said dismissively. But philosophy will not restore the Dragon Empire to its former glory. And what if the Dragon Empire's former glory was built on a foundation that was flawed from the beginning? Zara asked. What if true glory lies not in domination, but in cooperation? What if the greatest achievement our species could accomplish would be to become partners and guides rather than conquerors and rulers? The question hung in the air, challenging not just Seraphina but every being present to reconsider their fundamental assumptions about strength, success, and the purpose of civilization itself. Marcus felt a surge of pride watching Zara stand her ground against the representatives of her own species. This was the confidence he had hoped to nurture when he first found her, the self-assurance that came from knowing her own worth regardless of what others thought. The human has corrupted you, Seraphina said, her golden scales shifting to patterns that Marcus's growing understanding of dragon body language told him indicated disgust. You have forgotten your true nature. No, Zara said with absolute certainty. Marcus helped me discover my true nature. And my true nature isn't about being superior to other species. It's about being the best possible version of myself, which includes being a good partner, a loyal friend, and a bridge between different ways of understanding the universe. She paused, looking around at the mixed crowd of species, then back at the dragons who had come to recruit her. I won't return to a society that measures worth by the ability to dominate others, she said. My place is here, working with beings who value cooperation over conquest, understanding over intimidation. Seraphina stared at her for a long moment, clearly struggling to comprehend how a dragon could reject the offer to return to their homeland. Finally, she spoke. Then, you are no longer truly a dragon, she said. You have become something else entirely. Yes, Zara said with a smile that showed she understood the unintended compliment. I have become something better. As the dragon delegation departed, clearly disappointed by their failure to recruit Zara, Marcus and Zara made their way back to their workshop. The crowd gradually dispersed, but not before many beings approached them to express support for Zara's choice and to inquire about opportunities for their own species to participate in similar cooperative ventures. Are you okay? Marcus asked as they settled back into their familiar workspace. I know that couldn't have been easy, rejecting your own kind like that. Zara was quiet for a moment, looking around at the tools and projects that represented the life they had built together. It wasn't really rejection, she said finally. It was choosing to embrace what I'd become rather than trying to fit back into what I used to be. And what have you become? Marcus asked, genuinely curious about her perspective. Something new, Zara said thoughtfully. Not just a dragon, not just an engineer, but a bridge between different ways of thinking. A living example that cooperation can create something greater than any individual could achieve alone. Marcus nodded, understanding completely. So what's next? We've got enough data from the artifact to keep researchers busy for decades, and more collaboration requests than we could handle in a lifetime. Zara looked at their workspace with the same intensity she had once directed at complex engineering problems. We build something, she said. Not just a business or a research facility, but a model for how different species can work together. A place where the barriers between different forms of intelligence become bridges instead of walls. An institute? Marcus asked. A community, Zara corrected. A place where beings from any species can come to learn from each other, to solve problems together, to prove that the Keeper was right about the power of cooperation. Marcus could see the vision forming in Zara's mind, and, as always, her enthusiasm was infectious. Here on Kepler 442b? Why not? This backwater planet where nobody important ever goes? It seems like the perfect place to build something that will change the galaxy. As they began sketching out plans for their new venture, both Marcus and Zara felt the deep satisfaction that came from knowing they had found their true purpose. They would continue to be engineers and problem solvers, but they would also become something more, teachers and exemplars of a new way of thinking about relationships between species. Years later, the Marcus Chan and Zara Institute for Interspecies Cooperation would become one of the most respected institutions in the galaxy, attracting students, researchers, and diplomats from hundreds of worlds. Its graduates would go on to establish similar institutions throughout the galaxy, creating a network of cooperation that would eventually transform galactic civilization. But, on this day, as they worked side by side in their small workshop on a forgotten planet, Marcus and Zara were simply what they had always been: partners who had chosen to see strength in their differences, family who had found each other when both were lost, and living proof that the most powerful force in the universe was not the strength of any individual, but the bonds that could form between minds willing to bridge the gaps between different ways of thinking. The unwanted dragon had found her place in the universe, not by becoming what others expected her to be, but by embracing what she truly was. And the backwater engineer had discovered that sometimes the most important job in the galaxy was simply believing in someone when no one else would. Together, they had changed everything. And they were just getting started.